Greetings, sir and sirettes, and welcome back to From the Depths with me, Lathrix, and of course, welcome to an unfinished fortress. In today's video, as you can probably tell by the title, we are simply finishing off the fortress, sorting out its PID system, maybe adding shields, definitely adding a lot more armor, since, well, this is actually the underside currently. There's a lot of stuff missing. Hopefully by the end of the video it will be completely finished, making it one of the only actual vehicles in the Building the Fleet series to be 100% finished, and then we're going to send it against some enemies. Currently it's around about 80,000 resources, making it actually quite cheap, so I could see this being a defender and a slow invader in quite the early game. So I'm going to be sending it to battle against a lot of Deep Water Guard, I was going to call them Dustwind Gypsies there all at once, or perhaps some Onyx Watch ships, or maybe even some White Flyers. I won't be sending it against things like the Twin Guard, Steel Empire, and so on and so forth. So, let's just get started. The first thing I want to do is just armor up more. Currently, if we go into this cavity here, as you can see, there's a lot of room for improvement. This is the weapon, there's almost no armor at all. Thankfully, there's loads of space, and I do want to add a sort of extra bit of bulk around the outside here where I've left these flat, so hopefully shots coming in from the side should have very little success. The top is already stupidly armoured. The turret cap itself is about 6 layers of armour, this section here is about 6. Nothing's getting through outside of maybe some HESH or heat shells, which normally aren't used to counter things this deep down anyway, since you need to use the special shell type. Also, it's Steel Striders, not Steel Empire. I'm getting so mixed up with Ashes of the Empires, I'm fusing all the names. Anyway, like I was about to talk about, it is of course the Super Cavernation base, which I did get wrong. Because the last time I read it incorrectly, huzzah for dyslexia, I read it as it would lower the explosive or fragment by 75%, but instead it's to 75%. That's still really painful, don't get me wrong, that is cripplingly painful when it comes to EMP, fragments and explosives, but it doesn't mean it's unusable. Before, I thought it was just unusable, so I could perhaps make a different version of this, instead of this, using heat shells, or HESH shells, from underwater, 500mm. I think that might be absolutely devastating versus things like the Onyx Watch. Testing out a different type of shell here. Maybe I should have started closer to the enemy, which is dead. Okay, fire again. That definitely works versus lighter enemies. Okay, what about something a little bit heavier? Let's go with an Ironclad. It's like a surgical sledgehammer. And dead. Okay, so, Lathrix, what were those shells, I hear you ask? Well, there's something I've actually never used before. So that was the hollow point head, which flattens on first impact and imparts all kinetic energy onto the surface with an armor-piercing value of 10. Useful for taking out small unarmored targets, which it definitely is. It just cuts through huge layers at once. I'm tempted to use this rather than HESH or our original, although I do need to mess around with different warheads just to see how that works. Now, it seems like the armor penetration value is always going to be 10 regardless what the expected armor pierce is down here. So we should really just go off pure damage. The more damage you can do, the more of the layers you can chunk off. So I will be messing around with different setups for it. But it seems pretty good. Okay, let's fight it against something a bit, well, far heavier. The Trebuchet. Okay, there we are. Where are you before we actually allow the firing to start? There we are, let's see what happens. Now this normally holds up against HESH quite well, so I'm keen to see what this is going to be like. It's really weird to watch how that works. It just touches a piece and then, well, it kind of melts a section. I mean, it has completely stripped all of the bottom armor away in this area, but now it's struggling a little bit. Against heavy armor, with only armor pierce 10, that's going to have problems. It's not bad, but I feel like it's going to be worse off versus targets like this than either Hesh or the pure armor-piercing shells. And it's still going to have the weakness against shields that the armor-piercing shells do. So I think it's probably not going to be what I go for, but it's fun to watch. Yeah, see there, with the heavy armor, and also if it attacks an area which can easily break off without spreading the damage, it seems to have trouble there as well. So the whole bottom section is just open now. And behold the power of a hard counter. Now saying that, the advanced cannon seemed to get close, but yeah, not close enough. And this is taking way too long. If this is a defense force helping a fleet along to defeat enemies, this is taking too long to cause crippling damage. Still, interesting, and it's caused a bit of a sinking problem. Now to test out the Hesh shell in comparison. Now before we even allow this to hit, I will say I don't have massive hopes for this. Perhaps I will be proven wrong, in fact I'm hoping I will be. But the thing is, it is set to only 75% explosive damage because of the specialist shell, and only 90% regular speed because of the slowdown of water. Well, the slowdown effect is at 90%, so it's a little bit faster than that, but I still have had to add an extra gunpowder to make sure it gets at a decent speed before hitting the target. Which means, again, less warheads. Okay, that's a very large internal explosion there. Seems like perhaps because it is just an 8-meter shell, it's still very effective what it does. Yep, there goes something else. There goes the front weapon. Don't quite know what it's aiming at there at the front, but it's bent on killing it. Once again at the back. Massive internal damage. Yeah, it's just ripping it apart. So at close range, the Hesh shells still certainly work. The only problem is they're not all that quick, so airborne targets or fast targets will get away from this fairly easily. It does counter shields though, because it does still have the inertial fuse. Not bad. Not bad at all. Perhaps a good alternative. I think I will still stick with the armor-piercing rounds that go straight through the target, but this is a close second, and then the third is the impact shells. So with that, I can actually get to, you know, crafting the craft a little bit. Okay, so to begin with, we're making 2 identical chambers on both sides. This is at the very bottom of the craft, with many, many layers of armor on both the external sides, and more armor as I build up this area. These will both contain half of the ammunition each. The reason is, I want 2 areas for the enemy to attack, which are far enough away to not detonate each other, and I want them to be at the very bottom of the craft. If enemy are trying to fire even further underwater, there's even more chance they're going to miss, because they're aiming lower rather than higher, so as the shell falls, it's less and less likely to actually hit anything at all. At least, that's the thought process there. It's also a very cheap way to use the natural defense of the fact we're very, very deep underwater. So let's just complete this. As I seal this up, realizing I've now separated this into 4 separate ammo sections, which shouldn't detonate each other based off the basic ammunition explodey thing, then honestly, I think I've made this incredibly cheesy. I mean, I already have. The whole building, the whole concept is cheesy, so I'm just embracing it at this point. This is not something I would generally make in a campaign because it is such a ridiculous hard counter to very specific things. So next up, I'm going to do something very similar, a little bit further away. It should be at least 3 away to avoid all damage. There we go. And that is where the batteries will go. Do one on both sides. In fact, I could do it in a bit of a crisscross section instead, and that's maybe what I'm going to do. So instead of it being one here, then one diagonally over there instead. That seems reasonable. The AI, I'm not sure where it's going to go, but there's going to be plenty of space in the center. We could armor up and actually have some EMP protection. So, batteries, everything else. Okay, we're still vastly under 100,000 right now, since we did just remove all the batteries in the RTGs. I think I may go for a steam engine rather than RTGs. This way, we can get more power without such a huge upfront expense. And that way, we could perhaps make shields. I might not, though. Having this almost free to run, just a very small steam engine, is really appealing to me, making this cheaper and more efficient? Don't know. I'll decide very soon. Okay, basic armor is now added all around, well, below the midpoint. So we have the AI, we have the ammo, and we have the batteries all nice and secure. I am currently nowhere near the fight and thus unable to assist. We don't have any of our traits on except for Brawler in case I get hit. So let's see how well we do. The enemy is, of course, a copy of ourselves, since we know how well this cannon does, and it is still using Hesh shells. I'm not really specifically designed against Hesh, more against armor piercing, but I think with the air pockets I've left, mostly unintentionally, it should still be okay. If this does really badly, I will test it versus AP, and then if it does really well against that, I'll be okay. If it does badly against both, I'll change it. If it does well even against just Hesh, then I am reasonably convinced this is going to be okay. Three, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that's one of the ammo stores. That was the main ammo store. That's fine. AI is still intact. There's one AI at the front, one at the back. I'm surprised it hasn't been killed yet. It must be going for the ammo. Point blank, 8-meter Hesh shells, though. Yeah, it's still going for the ammo. Making it float a bit. I think I may need to change the altitude controls a bit to be a bit more aggressive. Should really move off repair there, just in case I accidentally do so. That's doing really well. Yeah, the air pockets really helped, and that's the front AI completely taken out. By the looks of things, both ammo stores. The PID's gone, so now it's a bit floaty. You can really tell the difference when the PI is off and on. Okay, the weapon's gone, but we're not testing that yet, since we haven't actually armored it up yet. It does seem like most enemies will go for the ammo first. Look at that, without the PID, it just floats. And it's gone, okay. That was really good. Point blank, slow shells. They will normally not reach this target. Going to redo it now with the armor piercing I was talking about before. Once again, this is point blank, so it's not exactly fair, but let's see what happens here. We have just regular armor piercing rounds. So we have an armor piercing value of 37, kinetic damage is 30 or 40,000, I can't quite remember. It's the one we tested out in the first video, it's the exact same. So once again, we know what the shells are like. That one controls the gun. Note to self, armor piercing does better than expected. Maybe heavy armor is the solution. Or perhaps it's just that one front ammunition store that's vulnerable. Yeah, it looks like it. It's really slowing down now. The weak point's been destroyed. Now it's... Oh, no, never mind. Both AI are down. So, in a twist of fate, it's better versus Hesh than it is armor piercing. Shields might be needed. We definitely have enough power. We have 2 tiny steam engines, and it's giving more than enough power for all of the other things. Also, that's glitching out and moving us horribly. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Bit of a weirder angle this time, but hopefully it should be okay. 1 deflect, 2, 3. So this is a stacked strength 3 shield. At that speed, and at that angle, which I think is more natural from coming up above, that's why I've positioned them in such weird ways. Well, that shield is doing the job spectacularly. But also, I have added some extra armor precautions on the inside, because the problem is, which I quickly found out, is that the front armor section, well, technically the front and the back, didn't have layered armor on the outside. Also, I obviously didn't allow it to reload, but still... The gun's next, anyway. That's gonna be fine. It wouldn't be difficult to add those shields to every side if I just upped the steam boilers slightly. Currently, I'm using 2 material per second. Ooh! If I up that to maybe 6, it should be enough to completely cover all of the bottom with those type of shields. Although, the extra armor should be enough, honestly. Maybe strength 2. It'll allow more through, but the angle's always going to be so steep in almost all cases that it should be okay. Yeah, I'm okay with that. Okay, yeah, so what I'm going to do is strength 2 everywhere, going to see if that will be able to hold in terms of our power level, because I don't really want this to cost much more, and then I'm going to armor up the turret cap, and, sorry, not the turret cap, actually that's the best armored place in this whole thing. The weakest area right now is here, so armoring up this section, maybe altering a few things on the inside, then I'm going to do a few stress tests. Can it defeat a swarm of things? Now, I don't really know what's a good fighter against underwater enemies. I will have a quick look-see. But even if I can't find those, if it can counter things from the Onyx Watch so successfully, I will still consider it a success, even if a very cheesy one. Don't worry, I am fully aware this is not a great test of building skill, but a great test of cheese. So I've upped the engine power a little bit. Well, it's now costing about double what it did before. And we have strength 2 shields in every location you can see. Currently not at the right angle. I don't know why, but I pasted them incorrectly, so now they're all kind of flat. They will be more of an angle when they're finished, but you get the idea. There's massive vulnerabilities in each of the corners, but honestly, everything important will normally go through there, so I'm not massively worried. It also has to go through every single armor section I've made if it goes through the corner, so they should be the sturdiest points. Also, the shields at the top there, on the actual weapon itself, are attached to the weapon itself, which means as it turns... Let's just quickly spawn in something nice and easy. Oh, hello, a marauder. A marauder. This shield turns with the weapon, as you can see. Explosion per shot. Beautiful. Can you please kill its AI? You do have aim point selection. Stop going for its little ammo stores. Either way, you get the idea. It's got shielding now. Originally, I didn't even want shielding, so I'm going to make these invisible. Well, first of all, I'm going to alter the angle, then I'm going to make them invisible, and hopefully, this should result in a good end product. In fact, I might leave those bottom ones at that angle, then spread out the top ones, almost like a kind of flower. Sure, why not? There we go, and then the shields are also not intersecting, which I think can cause problems. There used to be an issue where shields could be placed incorrectly, but work until you reload the craft. Then it would simply say, oh, by the way, your shields are intersecting, they're not working. Although I think that revolves around the actual line of the shield. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there. I'm not very knowledgeable when it comes to shields because I hate using them. I don't like the aesthetic of them, I don't like the concept of them, and I really, really do not have fun placing them optimally. That was a weird way to say that. But either way, it's, in my opinion, the least fun thing in the game is placing shields correctly. Into the depths we go once more, but now it's ready for war. That rhymed. Okay, that was unintentional. But now it's ready for war, yeah. So it's far more expensive than it used to be. It's now 121,000 and 16,000 volume. Still relatively cheap in comparison to other godlies, especially things of the Onyx Watch and that nature. So it's still a cheap craft overall, but no longer as early game as I originally intended. I have now massively increased the internal armor. There is spaced armor, but most importantly, there is layered armor all the way around. There is 3 thick on the outside, then some space, and then 2 thick before the weapon itself, which makes the weapon still the least armoured section of the entire craft. The rest of the craft tends to err on the safe side of 6 to 7 layers, then a space. I was going to say air armour, but I guess it's water armour now. Also, the torpedoes are surprisingly vulnerable, but hopefully the enemies won't be attacking there. At least that's the idea. The shields are covering the same location as before, and now I realise I have a bit of a weird cross on the front when the weapon's aiming forwards, so that's always good. Now, what I'm going to test out is something a bit surprising. I'm going to use the Medringard versus this. The reason is, the Medringard has its weak point actually underneath it. And it does have very, very good anti-missile and anti-shell capabilities, so it should be able to counter it, and yet be weak to it, but also, it has absolutely amazing torpedo systems, so it should be able to wreck this thing. Basically, this will die, but how long will it take for it to die? That's the question. I've just realised something. The Medringard's going to be useful, but it does have the particle cannon on the front, which really doesn't care if the enemy is underwater. Of course, it would help if I actually spawned in the Medringard and not one of our weapons we're testing out. Medringard, spawn in please. Thank you. Now, I will say, one thing is unfair here. We have our vehicle on our team, which means, because we're in the vehicle designer, it will not suffer from AI death, nor will it suffer from the 80% or whatever the percentage is, and sinking, because that will happen very soon, and I want to see how the damage adds up. Though there is a very real chance that this very expensive craft, designed to take out heavy armoured targets, might be able to one-shot it with the particle cannon, to be perfectly honest. Okay, things on. Oh, here comes the shells. That's doing a lot of internal damage. I can hear an explode. Yeah, okay, Medran Guard, take that. Now pause time. I want to... Okay, perfect time to pause there. Look at that. Oh, look at that. I do love the Medran Guard. I'm proud of it, despite the fact I never finished it. Zap. Oh yeah, straight through, destroying blocks of armor there. Thankfully, it wasn't actually a good hit. That missed anything vital. Do I have binoculars currently attached? No, I don't. Now I do. Okay, torpedoes are hitting. Advanced cannons are too far away to do all that much. The torpedoes did minor damage. Once again, the particle cannon doing some damage there. The problem is now the enemy is so far away, our shells are officially hitting the front shield and now are being rendered useless. Even if they were Hesh, they would still be rendered useless because the laser munition defense would be able to knock them out if they were Hesh. Still, stood up to a brunt of torpedoes, which is the whole reason why we're using this. Oh god, am I attached? Oh, okay, another unfair thing. I did not mean to do that, I do apologise. My healing speed, though, really shouldn't have had too much of an effect. Weapon still online. The torpedoes are going for the centre of mass for the most part. Torpedo defense might actually be worth it on this craft then. Its advanced cannons were very heavily countered. The particle cannon going through, but there's too much armour there to get to the core, it seems. Which is surprising. It actually got to the core of the Ragnarok quite easily, and the core of itself once. Shields just being deflected or missing at this point. They're not fast enough to be accurate with this thing's constant slight movement. The word slight always gets me stammering. Have you noticed? Obviously the missiles aren't going to get anywhere near the target. So, a good showing at the start, but ultimately it will eventually be a victory for the Medran Guard. It'll just take a very, very long time, which, as a distraction vehicle, that's good enough. In fact, it may have damaged its torpedo launcher. It stopped firing. For anyone who watched the Ragnarok versus the Medran Guard fight, the Medran Guard doesn't stop firing torpedoes. Ever. There's no reason for it to. Oh my god, it may have knocked out its ammo. Okay, this one's heavily damaged. Oh god, that one's heavily damaged. Look at that. One torpedo system was completely ripped out. The other one ripped... You destroyed its torpedo systems. Okay, I'm going to stop it here because honestly it's getting boring, but that was shockingly good against something which isn't actually that countered by underwater craft, but I do think it was that early shell. Oh yeah, look, it's opened up there, its two torpedo systems have been, sorry, one torpedo, one missile system have been removed. It's exposed, okay, the gun's now exposed thanks to the particle cannon. God, that's broke through 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of armor there. Well, okay. Good first showing. Now let's fight something else. This time making sure to spawn it and not click spawn in the vehicle's chair. I mean, there is something secret I've been working on for people who've been around for long enough, but I don't think it's working yet, so... There is this thing. The anti-Medran Guard. Not because it counters the Medran Guard, mind you, but because it's the reverse philosophy of the Medran Guard. Far, far more firepower, way, way less armor. And it's going to be way bigger. But that's a pet project which you're never going to see again, most likely. Here's a question. Can the lovely turret defend itself versus this? Basically, it's can you destroy the weapon or its AI before these torpedoes reach you? Honestly, I have hope that it probably can. Torpedo is about to reach, and... Okay, connection has been made. Can it lift it, though? It's a very heavy thing. Doesn't seem like it, and it looks like it's damaged the actual weapon itself. And by weapon, I mean the torpedoes. So this thing's PID is really fighting against this one's. What's happened to those? Oh, front propulsion, heavily nerfed, but still spinning away. That weapon is really heavily armored, but no. It looks like it took out the propulsion in one of the first few hits. It was moving so slow there at the end. So one-on-one, the Kraken cannot defeat this, because this is pretty much designed to defeat things like the Kraken. Weirdly enough, they're almost the exact same cost, with the Kraken being 10,000 cheaper. But please remember, the Kraken is nowhere near finished. Its internal armor and shielding hasn't been added yet, in addition to a whole plethora of things, which I will add later. I'm actually disappointed that one of my creations beat one of my other creations there. Actually really disappointed. Would you like to know the best way to find weak spots on craft like this? Bombard it with loads of weak to medium hits. So, we're going to summon in a load of the minion craft for the Kraken we just killed. A bit of revenge there, I suppose. All of these, of course, have torpedoes, both large and small. So we're going to see how this deals with this. Honestly, I don't think it should win. It's definitely not designed for that, but let's just see what happens. Torpedoes from everywhere. Oh, instantly stopping that one in its tracks, though. Okay, one's already down, but here we are. Torpedoes hitting from every single direction, sadly knocking each other out of the way a lot of the time, but still. Here come the smaller variants. Okay, that is the room with the torpedoes, which I already know is a weak point, and that's fine. Ignore salvage, please. You've just been wasting all of that time firing at something which is already dead. Okay, main room's still fine. Is that barrel destroyed, or is it just me? Okay, the barrels went down, but that's to be expected. The barrel's always going to be weak, and that's a heavy barrel as well. Which means now its accuracy is massively diminished. So to me, the torpedo system needs a little bit more armor. I was expecting that the 2 to 3 layers would be enough, but clearly not. In fact, in some locations, it is literally just one thick, because saving cost defending the more important areas. Yeah, without that barrel, it's just not able to aim directly, and since it's using an armor-piercing round that goes through the enemy, it needs to hit important components. If it only skims the side, it's pretty much worthless. Still up and running, though, on 88% health now. Incoming another volley of the larger... No, yep, the larger torpedoes. Still fine. That's the outer layer of the air pocket before the main section. Rotors are offline. Such a shame it's lost its barrel. It really has lost its ability to defend itself. At least effectively. Maybe I should make it target closer enemies first. Just don't think that really matters though, except for when the barrel's destroyed, because it is a very fast, long-range shell. Oh. Shots have stopped. Why? Is it reloading? Which it might have to, or is it damaged? Yep, it's damaged enough. It's lost all of its AI, which means at some point it's had a piercing shot. Where? Intact, 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 heavily damaged but intact, annoyingly intact. I don't see where the shot... Oh, okay, the shots have got... No, not there either. There. Which means it's also got through here. Yeah, it's got through there. Okay. So I see where the damage went. So, again, I'm okay with that, actually. It died to very bad odds. And still killed one in the process. Probably would have killed two if it wasn't, you know, focusing on the dead. Oh no! The enemy are sending their godly forces against us. They are sending 2 trebuchet. Now, the trebuchet are actually more expensive than our lovely craft here. And also... slightly larger, at least I believe they are. So let's have a quick look, see if that's true. Now, the trebuchet are both hard. No, not hard. They are just regular countered by this because their weapons are fast enough. They do tend to hit the floor if they're close enough. Now, I don't think they are close enough right now, so actually I think it will be a hard counter. Now, I've said all that. I am now backpedaling quite a bit. Yep, you're more expensive and far higher volume. Also getting a bit of lag. Probably because we are in the vehicle designer, so... yeah, at that angle, it's just not going to work. Oh no, actually. Actually, we are taking damage. We are being hit. Never mind. Not hard countered in the slightest. Curious to see who's going to win now, honestly. For some reason, I'm not firing my main weapon. There we go. Took a while to aim. It's a very slow to aim weapon. That's definitely going to be a weak point. Okay, just pause time for a second so I can actually see what's going on. Oh, look at that one shell there just exiting the water. Here's hoping went all the way through. It very well... No, it missed. No, it certainly missed. It would have been awesome if it actually did go all the way through there. Also, I should zoom out a bit so I can see what's going on. Thank you. Shell's going in, doing some damage. Actually, not as much as I expected, which is a shame. Health-wise, we've lost 4% health. We're slightly winning versus one of them, but of course there is two of them. The torpedoes are now reaching their target. There is some munition defense, but it isn't doing that much to stop them. Internal explosion there. If we go in this mode, we can see what's going on at a broader perspective. Yeah, the missiles just aren't reaching because of the munition defense. The torpedoes, on the other hand, are, because of course they take less laser damage since they are underwater. We have, however, stopped shooting forwards. Why? That's curious. Okay, something's happened. Shouldn't be reloading this early, so something has occurred there. Even the torps are actually now getting torn up before they're reaching the target, which is really annoying. Is it firing? You know, I think it is actually firing. Never mind, I think I may be mistaken there. Yeah, it's definitely firing. It's taking damage, you just couldn't see it. I thought I saw the gun glitch out. But actually, I think that was the yeah, it was definitely the recoil. Oh. For some reason, then we just can't see our own shells. That's bizarre. Yeah, look, it just came out of there, but we didn't see the shell coming in. So it has been shooting this entire time. That isn't a problem. It's not doing as much damage as expected. Maybe I should swap back to the impact shells. Oh, but saying that, that one was beautiful, then going all the way through and doing some serious damage. May just skip ahead a little bit here, since this is taking a very long time. Now again, I do realise we are using a very cheesy vehicle. I just want to see how it works versus the average enemy, not something that can counter it, and not something it massively hard counters. So just a normal vehicle, like the trebuchet. Well, it's certainly causing the first one to start sinking. You know, I take it back. It's not even... I think it is now back to a hard counter. Yeah, the shells aren't quite reaching. At the start they were, but I think they've moved back too much now, so... Well, at least we're showing it works in its intended purpose. I don't think the shells are as good as I thought they were, though. If it was using Hesh, it would have definitely won by now, but of course Hesh is unreliable versus airborne or very fast targets. This, as you can see, even underwater, because it's an 8-meter shell, it's packed full of gunpowder, which means it's very, very, very quick. I would say in a normal fight at this point, I would say fight the other one. The first one's no longer a threat, change target. Which hopefully it will, if it actually listens to me. Well, the torpedoes are at least listening to me, although I'm not actually controlling that in any way. Look at that. So badly damaged. Oh, the shell's actually hitting now. It really doesn't want to do what I want it to do, so it's just firing at this one still. So we can hard counter things, we found that out. So I'm going to quit it here, because obviously we are eventually going to win, it's just taking a while, and I'm going to swap the shells back to either Hesh or the impact shells. Just for reference, when Lathrix says impact shots, he actually means the hollow point shells, meaning that the shots impart all of their kinetic energy into the very first thing they hit, rather than going through, causing huge layers of armor to simply vanish before it, but not hitting vulnerable sections quite as easily. Very damaging versus smaller opponents, and potentially damaging versus larger opponents if you have a large enough gun. And ours, once again, is 8 meter, because we are immobile. It means we have no movement parts or anything like that, which has enabled us to even have this. And he's spawning behind us, absolutely a mile away. I'm just testing out the gun more than anything with this fight. Which means I really should have been over there. How did those explode? I guess timed fuses, and because they're not used to going underneath the water, it's causing problems. The problem is, we're so far away, our shells may actually leave the water. So as you can see, these would have been much better versus the trebuchets. Look at that, instantly destroying something of importance, I imagine. And exploded. There are some shields on the side here, which is very annoying, and that's the problem with using pure kinetic with very high velocity like this. Still though, massive holes being poked into this. Yeah, I think maybe this is the weapon I'll choose. I said this was third best of the 3 options, but maybe not. Maybe, even because of the sheer size of our shell, we could have a penetration depth weapon. So the shell goes inside the enemy and only then does it detonate, causing massive internal explosions. Very cool. Okay, so I think I will figure out some proper enemies for us to fight. Please feel free to tell me any craft which will meet the criteria in the standard enemies, because there are a lot of them and I don't have time to check them all out. I will find an enemy which is a counter to this, or perhaps a medium counter, I don't know, but right now I simply don't have time. I would consider this quote-unquote finished with things we could improve on, because there's so much more we need to build, and I can't spend any more hours really on this today, maybe in the future. So the main things I would change is, I think I need more armor around the torpedo and missile systems, although they are only backup weapons. I think we need a little bit more in the way of reload capacity of the weapons, so perhaps making the main gun slightly larger, but the thing is, it's a really good shape right now, and it's very easy to protect. So most things I would do would be controversial, because they would cause other things to change. Although I'm sure there's other things I will think of as time goes by, this is functionally complete. So I really do hope you've enjoyed today's video, and it wasn't too dry since it was just testing out this weapon over and over again. In the next video we will be making something from scratch, or upgrading the Kraken, or doing something hopefully a lot more interesting. If you have enjoyed the video, then of course likes, favourites, shares, comments, all that good stuff helps out me, helps out the channel, and most importantly shows that From the Depths is a series you wish to see continued in the future. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.